This is the story of a beautiful place, known as the happiest place on Earth, and all of its history, its secrets, and its tricks that you may find if your mind believes in design, and you allow your heart to believe in magic. Step inside and become a citizen of Disneyland. Greetings, fellow citizens of Disneyland. Brickey here with episode 72 of Disneyland For Designers, joined today by my good friend, VIP tour guide for Disneyland, none other than Philander Butler. Hear us comb over the past, the present, and the possible future of the world-famous Jungle Cruise. And then exclusively for Club 1313 members, sign up today if you'd like to get bonus content and support all the other content that I create. We've got 30 extra minutes where Philander and I go over some of the hot topics happening right now in the world of Disneyland fans. And before I get started with today's episode, I want to remind everybody that I will be doing a Club 1313 exclusive live stream from the Disneyland Resort this Friday, but you got to be a member to see where I'm going to pop up inside of one of the parks, taking everybody around for a lap, available only for members. And please mark in your calendar that I will be live streaming from Oogie Boogie's Bash starting Thursday, September 9th for every Thursday, except for the week at the end of September, beginning of October, when I go out to Walt Disney World to cover the 50th anniversary from all four parks, from every angle that I possibly can, while I'm doing a week of Walt Disney World coverage. Friends, I'm so happy you showed up to listen to today's episode 72 of Disneyland For Designers, with my great friend, Philander Butler. It's the Jungle Cruise. Philander Butler, welcome back to Disneyland For Designers. How are you, sir?
I am fantastic. It is fantastic to be back.
It's nice for you to fit me in on your lunch break.
That's right. I am at the park right now. I have got about 30 minutes with Brickey here before I got to run back out and make magic.
Well, nobody knows that I'm here because I'm wearing my transformable plaid vest.
Complete with sound effects also.
Well, I mean, you can't transform. Autobots can't come together without that. Oh,
you
sorry.
have a slogan that you say when you transform, though. So is not Autobots roll out, is it?
Plaid vest, roll out. And then I just jump up on you and cruise into the backside. So we're talking today about the Jungle Cruise.
World famous.
World famous. And I have a couple of different topics for you that I want to know.
Nice.
Does this attraction, is it just me, or it doesn't have a lot of hidden things inside the actual ride itself? I know that the queue, which is kind of hard to take your time through because they really move you through up and down the different flights.
They do.
And the thing I always get sidetracked about on the queue is what a beautiful view you get of the attraction coming in and out of the dock, a safe distance from the jokes. I love that perch of being able to see it coming and going, but ignoring all the things that are buried inside the queue. Is there that much hidden secrets in the actual footprint of the attraction?
No, I feel like it's all pretty much based on those little vignettes, like a lot of them Mark Davis done. But the queue also never really had anything up until now. This new reimagining, that queue was kind of bare. It hinted at, this is kind of a rustic area where skippers kind of hung out, but now there's a lot of stuff littered in there, especially since they are trying to promote those new characters that are in that Trap Safari scene. But before,
right,
the attraction itself, besides all the trees, there's nothing really hidden in there. And now you've got the fun vignettes of your favorite monkey that's at the gift shop.
You want to start out with that? You want to get me going right now? Dude, the monkey that takes your photo is so charming. And the shutter on the camera is so monkey pace. It's and then he stops for a minute. And the little dude partying on the old...
the music box or the spinning around?
Not a turntable. Back then it was the Epiphone, right? Mm-hmm. That's what it would be called. And he's just up there spinning around and having a good time. If that monkey took your photo, it would be phenomenal, because I literally have the look of joy on my face when I'm staring at
the biggest smile on your face.
Biggest smile. And hey, that's what you get for riding on basically the wrong side of the boat. Because
true.
all the newer stuff is happening over on the other, if you're staring at the Skipper.
Heavy right-hand side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's like port or starport or starburst, but I don't know.
Starburst?
Come on. I'm not a seaman. What do you expect from me? I'm just one mere man. So there's not a lot of actual hidden gems inside of there.
Yeah, but an attraction that I am riding with people, that's one of the ones I don't spend a lot of time pointing out something that they could be looking forward to. More so now I would, because now we're looking for those characters and nods to that. But beforehand, it was just mainly a lot of the things I talked about was just how impressive this space is that has grown. And mentioning to a guest, like, look at how tall this bamboo is in these trees and how it's grown over 66 years. And now Jungle Cruise is, I know a lot of people don't know, it has its own God, what's the word I'm looking for? Its own jungle. Like there's insects.
That wasn't really the word you were looking for.
It's something like that. It's like its own. It starts with an E.
Ecosystem.
Yes, it has its own ecosystem. So there are bugs in there that only stay in there, and it's stuff that's been brought in from those trees that were collected and seeds that were planted. Like,
wow.
There's animals that stay in that space. It has grown so massive now.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. There probably is like wildlife that can just live off of that habitat inside of there.
It's just in there. From talking with my skipper buddies that work there, but yeah, it's got its own ecosystem of plants, animals, bugs that don't leave that space.
It really has turned into its own real jungle. Like it's been a transformative experience when you look back at the beginning of the Jungle Cruise to where it's at now. One of the things that I love to do is put in, a random year, 67, Disneyland home movie, and just see what's posted and then look at people's old,
videos, pictures,
the old 16 millimeter stuff that people shot, or maybe it's 8 millimeter that people just shot with consumer good cameras. There's no sound. So I always love the music that people put over the top of it.
Can we also take a moment to thank all those people that
my
just
God.
Casually made a home video and now we're like, this is incredible footage now.
Well, there's something about the way that the park is seen through the guests versus the park itself.
Yeah.
I feel like Disney is, other than Imagineering story, I feel like Disney has really kind of struggled to tell their own story, which is no surprise because when you are the product, a lot of times, I could right now record a beautiful bio about you that would make you cry. Somebody goes, "What do you do for a living?" To me, I go, I don't really do like last night at Starbucks, this woman goes, "What are you doing tonight?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm off to work." She goes, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" I'm like, "I do a podcast." And she's like, "What?" She goes, "What's it about?" I'm like, "Just a bunch of bullshit."
Nothing really.
Couldn't even tell her. I don't want to get into it. So I do understand that Disney sometimes has a hard time telling their own story. But what I love about that old archival guest footage is the Jungle Cruise is always on that footage. And it really drives home that on opening day, from 55 to, when do we get Pirates? That's 69?
67.
67.
Yeah.
So really on that first 12-year run, and Matterhorn kind of stepped in and gave an actual thrill ride, but you always see the Jungle Cruise because that was the real world, attraction for the older guest. And you got to keep in mind, everything in art, you got to look at the context in which it was created. Yes. People were not traveling and flying and zigzagging all around the globe back then.
If they were, they weren't going to places like that. That's for sure.
Well, Don Draper did take his kids to Disneyland.
He did.
Opening year. So I'm maybe not a good husband, but he was a good dad.
He's a good dad. Yeah, it's cool to see. Some of us like to say that was the first e-ticket. Well, the e-ticket didn't come until 59 for Matterhorn.
Yeah. Is that when the e-tickets rolled out? When Matterhorn?
59. But people will say Jungle Cruise was the first e-ticket technically because that experience was way more elaborate than anything else. Because you look at Peter Pan's Flight, Mr. Toad, Snow White, those were done and over in about 2 minutes. But you talk about this 8-minute, 6-minute long jungle thing with not necessarily audio animatronics at the time, but the beginning bones of that was by far the most elaborate experience at Disneyland in those first 4 years.
Yeah, those aren't audio animatronics, that first wave. They're just more mechanical animals.
No sound coming from them. If sound is there, it's external ones, not from the actual figure itself.
And it has no tethered relationship to the movement. It's just like,
yeah, they go
and
up and go down.
Maybe it aligns with the lion's mouth opening. Maybe it doesn't. It's just kind of happening.
But you were mesmerized nonetheless.
But see, that's the thing. Context, right? Like, you get on a boat in 55, 56. Mm-hmm. You go through this area that looks like no other place you've been to in Southern California. And you start to, in your mind, think, oh my God, like this is different than the zoo. Because in the zoo, I'm standing on asphalt. There's a brick wall 3.5 feet in front of me. Mm-hmm. And I'm leaning over another 3 feet of chain or whatever.
Or fencing. Yeah.
And then the animal, there's a moat between me and the animal. Then the hippo's like over in a ditch. Like, literally riding by the boat and seeing the animal, quote unquote, in its natural habitat, and seeing the hippos come up and come down.
Wiggle the ears, yeah.
That just must have been mind blowing.
Yep.
I mean, absolute mind blowing. In the same way, for our generation, we're like, oh my God, I have just been taking on a Star Destroyer in the universe of Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for us in the life of tech that we've lived to say Jungle Cruise could have never been Rise of the Resistance, but it was for the first 4 years.
Yeah, it was. Things like that and Pirates. I like to put people in that headspace because now it's easy for people, and I cringe every time someone's like, oh, Pirates is boring. And I'm like, oh. Like,
those are fighting words.
I know. You're just like, get out of here right now.
Yeah.
But to try to put people in the headspace of being there when it happened. I was
yes.
like, remember when you saw something so impressive that your mind was trying to figure out the magic trick, where you were absolutely befuddled by the technology on display. I talk a lot about Juan, the Barker board that was outside of Tiki Room, where he was out there to explain to the guests what was going on inside of the Tiki Room because no one had ever seen anything like it. And they had crowds of people just standing at this single bird outside. That was the first animatronic.
Not even knowing that if they went inside, they'd find a plethora of birds and totem poles and flowers and lots of...
Yeah. Because I almost equate that now to Spidey in the campus, where people are lining up to watch this thing happen, to see it run.
I'll do it when they use clear rope.
That's right.
How come they didn't use the clear rope?
All fresh out.
Didn't have any. Not spot at all. And a move of theme park dominance. They're like, we'll show Disney. We'll buy all that clear rope.
Get all the clear rope. They don't want them to have any of that.
No, and I think that, there are a timeline of attractions inside Disneyland that you can just look at it as the ones that were the major shift.
Yeah.
And Star Tours and Indy were like a major shift in putting IP in the park. And each of those came at a moment when there hadn't been a lot of big moves for several years.
Yeah.
And the Tiki Room, like, that was a individual ticket. Mm-hmm. And they advertise it as such. And I always have this like lovable image in my mind that for sure had to happen where, professional couple that lives up in LA. Mm-hmm. They bought tickets. They went down on a Sunday, and their primary objective was like, I want to go see this new show that Walt Disney put together. And they went in there, enjoyed it for 15-minute runtime, came out with their mind blown. Just blown. Mm-hmm. And I think that Jungle Cruise, easy to overlook, but it hits in that same like rarefied air of attractions that were the mind-blowing, attraction of its time. And, when we look at it as the way that it was constructed and it was built, it feels emotionally so far away from Main Street.
Yeah,
and
the
fact that you can hear the cap gun when you're standing by the Walt Disney apartment at the firehouse there, or the fact that tree line, that tree line is one of the first things that was put in to, one, give it a chance to mature for the jungle, but two, to give a wind block for them building Main Street.
Yeah, block it. It's amazing because when you hear that story of Walt's grandkids, I think it was Christopher, that they would wake up in the morning from spending that in the apartment.
Christopher Robinson.
And they would sneak into the Jungle Cruise area and spy at people through the trees. You understand it because the proximity is so close where I can tell you from behind City Hall, it's like maybe 20, 30 feet from back of City Hall to Jungle Cruise, which is nuts.
Well, I've been fortunate enough on one of those nights when the park was buzzing to exit on the western side. And they they open the gates right at the edge of like refreshment corner and Jolly there, and so you just get like, we're allowed to walk through here,
and you're very casually like looking around. Is this all right today, or
is this like one of those things where they get all the guys that have warrants and like, free boat, show up and you get a free boat and they all go to jail? It's like, hey vlogger, come over here. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is
and say, Brickey, come over here and check out this new area. It's like a trap for you to. We got him.
Just like go right up into the tree upside down when the rope goes around my ankle.
We finally got him.
But I walked in that backside area there, and I mean, that truly is the backside of water.
Yeah.
Because you're walking right on the edge of the maintenance boats. There's no show back there whatsoever. And it just really kind of shows in your mind that footprint of Disneyland. Already in 65, they were just putting things touching side by side,
close. Which
gets into the other topic of Jungle Cruise is one of the biggest inside the berm attractions. I would say the only thing that might have a bigger footprint than that would be Autopia.
Yeah, Autopia and the Subs is probably because those are so entwined together. But you're right. That is it. That would have, if you're not counting Rivers of America, that is truly, those two together take up a massive footprint, like the size of land themselves. Like the fact that they are part of Tomorrowland is, it's impressive. But those two removed could create its own mini land, like the size of Adventureland or Avengers Campus, without Indy being there.
I mean, I could fit Avengers Campus in my own backyard, but what are you going to do? Phase 2. The thing about Jungle Cruise, though, is like, let's just do this for a second. I don't think this will ever happen because I think at the 100th year anniversary, it's still there.
Jungle Cruise is still there.
And I think it's still there in the 200th if the human race makes it that long. But let's just walk through this for a minute. If they were to remove the Jungle Cruise, right? Like if they were to take that out and to do the magic trick that they do with the Haunted Mansion and Pirates, where you build a building inside the berm, and then you take gas on the other side of the train. Think about how much more space that would be, right? But my question for you is there anything, is there actually room on the other side of that railroad track to build a warehouse to like house an attraction? Or is that edge of the Jungle Cruise, are we really tight to the edge of the property?
No, it could go beyond that.
Wow.
As long as they got obviously past the train, there's a service road back there. There's a location where the Circle D horses are. It's a small area, nothing remotely even close to as big as what was where Galaxy's Edge was. But there is additional space that they have where our Main Street vehicles kind of spend the night when they're not out. But that all essentially could be moved to an additional place. But they could get up right next to the Indiana Jones show building.
Wow!
So there's like another. I'm not sure what that would be in acres, but if you look at an overhead shot.
So there is a play there. Interesting. I don't think that would ever happen, though.
No,
I don't see them ever taking that out, just because it is such a part of the history. As far as like fun facts go, there's only a few that I know. One of my favorites that most people don't realize is that there is the Harper Golf window.
Yes, perfect. Facing his attraction
across the thoroughfare there of Adventureland. And it's pretty interesting because, obviously we're all familiar with the Hall of Fame of windows on Main Street USA. But isn't that one of the more rare, like fish out of water windows? Because you don't see those windows sprinkled around many other spots in the park. Yeah,
that's such an interesting thing, and I love you brought that up because people have always wondered about not only who gets a window, but where does it go? How do they choose the spot? And for them to very specifically put his facing the attraction, one of the attractions he's known for the most, is impressive because they could have very easily put it on Main Street, which is Harper Golf was part of the initial design phase for Main Street USA, where it's modeled after where he grew up, Fort Collins. So he could have easily fit there.
He even goes past Disneyland because a lot of like the City Hall, that's a sketch that he did for the Mickey Mouse Park that was obviously not built up in Burbank. So like Harper's like OG and met Walt when Walt outbid him on a train. And Walt's like, well, you seem like a fellow maniac. What are you up to? And then
fellow maniacs, that's right.
Hey, when we get back to the States, I'll look you up and maybe get you a job. I'm sure Harper's like, whatever. Like, whatever. Like, I always love these stories about, like, they make it cute about Walt. Like, oh, and
meeting somebody.
And he beat him out on the bid on a train. I'm sure Harper walked back to his car talking to his wife like, that guy thinks I'm going to go work for him.
It's like, I just met some random guy who's like, come work for me. I'm like, dude, I don't even know who you are.
Or when people are like, Walt used to go up and talk to old man Knotts all the time. Knotts' assistant was like, Mr. Disney's here. And he's like, tell him I'm busy,
Tell
man.
him I can't do that again. He took up like 4 hours of my day yesterday.
He shows up. He never buys anything. He's going to build a park down the street. Would probably be bigger than mine. Like, tell him. Oh, he's already at the. Hey, Walt, what's up? Hey,
how's it going?
What can I do for you today? What can I explain to you today? How the boysenberries made? What do you need, bud? Like, I just love these stories where they make him sound like this lovable guy, but when you're like, an adult with a business, you're like, people are probably so annoyed by him.
It's like, dude, we're done. Like, you can't keep coming back here. Like the person that's like just kind of constantly coming through is like, hey, the kid that's like trying to get a job somewhere that's showing up every single day. Yeah, and he's like, I know this guy is taking the stuff I'm saying and he's gonna do something with it.
Yeah, you think at one point Knotts was probably just like, oh man, Knotts was like, hey man, if you want to hire me as a consultant, you can do it.
Do that.
But our conversations here are done.
Yeah, we're finished here. Because I see all that dirt get moved down the way in Anaheim. Like, we're done here.
I heard somebody's farm just got bought not too far from here, and I'm putting two and two together. I know what you're up to, bud.
But yeah, his window is special because there's not a lot like that, but it fits perfectly when you think about that. And I love to show that because in theory it'd be fun if we had little tributes to a lot of the individuals who had windows, because Fess Parker, for being Davy Crockett, his is on the opposite side of Harper's, facing like Big Thunder and Rancho DeZocalo. So that's a great window for that area. So I love that, and I like to point that out, that of course it would be facing one of the things he's most known for.
It's also interesting that it says tattooing, which I'm pretty sure Harper didn't have any tattoos.
No, I doubt it.
It looked like he might have, though.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised.
Like, he seemed like a sort of a wild individual. So I know that is there, and next time you're walking, it's right between like there's two different ways you can go into the bazaar, right? Or there's where you can go in to eat, and then there's the bazaar, and it's flanked in the middle. There's probably like 5 or 6 stairs, and you're welcome to go up to the top of the stairs. Obviously the railing is always locked, but you can go up to the top of the stairs. Just watch out for the desert thief.
Oh my God. See, now you're going to bring that up right now. And I wish they would do that again. Maybe with this new indie coming out, they'll bring that back. If you don't know what we're talking about, Indiana Jones, when the 4th film of the much maligned 4th Indiana Jones film came out, they had an amazing like show thing where they had Indy battling people above the roofs of Adventureland. It was like a thing that just kind of popped up. I can't even recall if they even put it in the show guide, because they want it to be a spur of the moment, very similar to Avengers Canvas, where you just
that's what I was going to say.
This moment happened.
That's where that idea, that's something that has lived in the park before and eventually got phased out. They cannot do that with Avengers Campus, but whenever I go up there and I look over and I see that patio and I see how big that patio is to the right of the Harper window, I'm like, yeah, man, that's awesome that Indy used to fight the desert thief, and maybe to go with political times, they could make him the dessert thief and just put another S in there and just like, you come back with my Dole Whip.
Taking all the Dole Whips. He's stealing from Chocolate Hideaway.
Like Disneyland's very own Hamburglar. The dessert thief.
Just have the dessert thief just pilfering Dole Whips and bao buns.
Absolutely. Like, come back here with my Jungle Cruise boat that was adjacent to my dessert.
Have you gotten one of those? Have you been over there since then?
I have seen a couple of people that have purchased it, and I don't collect stuff.
Yeah, I know you're not a collector.
I don't know where to put things.
Yeah, that's it every time. What am I going to do with this
what do
thing?
I do with it? But
I feel good holding it in here in Disneyland, but then when I get home...
It's the moment when I get home and Beth goes, so what are you going to do with that?
I think that's the first thing.
I'm like defeated. Like, look what I got. What are you going to do with that, dummy?
Where's that going to go?
Oh. And then I do the little sad Charlie Brown walk out to the trash can and just throw it in there.
See, now I'm curious about what you come home with when you go to Walt Disney World, if anything. He's like, you got to come home with something. I already know.
One of those invisible dogs.
You're going to walk that in? Like you don't have your actual dogs, your awesome dogs at home?
One of my very few memories of going there as a child was people walking by with the invisible dog leash and being like, I don't get it. Where's the dog? Like, what's going on here?
Tell me about
people in Florida are weird. No, I'm a sucker for attraction-based merchandise. Specifically, anything that has to do with the show building or the ride vehicle.
Yeah, I remember you loved when they did the Funkos like that, where it was like Peter Pan sitting in the the boat or Walt with the castle like that.
Yeah, and I have a Walt with the castle that's still in its brown box that it gets shipped in. I've never opened it up and looked at it. I just know that I own it, and that brings me some sort of joy.
Yeah. You sleep a little easier at night knowing that you've got
See
it.
that brown box?
Ready.
Inside there, there's a man in his dream.
There's a man in his dream in that box. I'm not sure if I'll ever see it again, but I know it's in there.
But I know it's in there. Well, because when I open it up, I know that I'll get, now what are you going to do with it, dummy? But no, I think that that's a really very, very cool thing that they made. And in fact, when I was waiting for the cavalcade on the 66, a woman had bought one and she was eating her dessert and she just like set it up next to the garbage can. And I just walked up and I just grabbed him like, you don't mind if I look at this, do you? And after I walked away, I'm like, I was incredibly rude to that guest. Like, I was like, you don't mind if I look at this? And I already had it in my hand and I was like looking at it.
That's what my daughter does too. So I love that
we're on the same. There's just a slight age difference.
Like, Dad, can I do this? And she's already doing it.
Already halfway.
Why did you even ask?
Another little interesting fun fact that I know about the Jungle Cruise that I don't ever hear repeated, so maybe I don't know, but I watched that old archival footage of where Tony Baxter is looking at that stop animation of them building the parks.
Yeah.
And Tony's going on and on about the Jungle Cruise and everything, and he drops in there's the only place I've ever heard anybody, but he said that the two islands that you go around, one is named Manhattan and one is named Catalina. And when I tell that story, the little part that I add to it, which I don't think is, a little creative license there. If you think about it, Manhattan is the biggest island in America on the east.
Yeah.
Catalina is the biggest one in the west. So I think naming the islands that represents east meets west, which is kind of the idea of the attraction itself.
Yeah, that is fun. And I think that is only mentioned in that too, because I've never heard, you're right that is one that is very rarely heard and not like in the normal, like, oh, here's some fun things you can know about.
Pepper's Ghost.
Oh my God, yeah. Have you ever heard of Pepper's Ghost?
Yeah, that's how they make the backside of water.
Yeah, if you
all
reach
mirrors.
Out, yeah, it's not really there.
It will cut your hand off, kid.
Very like special sound effects, it's not actually there.
But so, is that canon?
That from him, because I've heard that only from a few other skippers, but I think because the fact is not like what they would consider like a really fun one, I think that's why it's kind of like been pushed to the back of all the things they could possibly say about, everyone always brings up Bill Evans and his work on the landscaping and Harper Goff with, driving the station wagon through.
That Rambler going through is just priceless, just man. Awesome. And he already looks like a character anyways. Yeah. So just him grinning and walking around with his measuring stick. Yep. So good.
Because those are the fun ones that get said all the time.
Yeah.
Or I feel like every time I talk about the Dominguez Palm, that one always surprises people. Or they like that one where, the palm tree that existed on the land prior that was owned by the Dominguez family.
And it's been moved a couple of times. Which is wild. And
there have been people that have told me that there were two palm trees, but I've never been able to confirm that.
I had heard two, and I've never been able to confirm it either, that there was two palm trees that flanked each side of the Dominguez family's driveway. Almost like when they came home, there's one on the left and right, and that sort of symbolized that they're pulling into their estate. And for a long time, I would tell people there's two of them in there, but when you look, there's only one big mega palm tree. And man, I feel like every year that thing gets harder and harder to spot just because that growth is so fantastic. Hello, fellow citizen of Disneyland. I want to thank you for showing up and listening to today's episode of Disneyland for Designers. This is episode 72, and there are so many other YouTube videos for you to discover over at youtube.com/adventuresindesign. And I just want to take a second to let you know that all of that content is made possible by my members over at club1313.com. Not only are they rewarded with exclusive live streams and 30 more minutes in today's podcast, but we have a private Discord server, which is the perfect place to become a part of a Disneyland community so that you always have a place to go whenever you feel like talking about Disneyland. And trust me, friend, no one is ever going to roll their eyes because they are excited to talk about it just like you are. Where other creators have focused on Patreon to support the content, I have gone a different direction, and I'm trying to build a community of people that celebrate the ideology, the dreamfulness of Disneyland, just like I do, and we would love to have you become a member today. Visit us at club1313.com. disneylandfordesigners.com. Now let's get back to episode 72, The Jungle Cruise, with VIP tour guide Philander Butler, made possible by the members of Club 1313. Thank you. Let me ask you this. What do you think about Jungle Cruise 2021? What do you think about all of the different additions that have been put in there?
I enjoyed it a lot. I've done it a few times now, and I appreciate that the stuff that is in there. I've heard people criticize the fact that all the additions are chimpanzees, or it's all monkeys. Like, oh, they just put a bunch more monkeys in. And these are people, of course, that are hard to please. But I like the new additions. I think they're really fun. They come from a place that you can see they were inspired by Mark Davis, which, if you're going to put more Jungle Cruise stuff in there, I mean, please make it centered around the person who added and kind of made it the way it is now. So I love that the little vignettes add to a whole larger story, because you see the Trap Safari that has the new characters on it. Then you see the back half of their boat, which was struck by the hippos. Then you see the front half of the boat, which has all of the primates on it. And then you see the Dr. Khan, who's one of the people that's on the Trap Safari on the pole. You see his butterflies, because he's Hepatologist? Butterfly guy. There you go.
Yeah.
You see them. So I like that now they're all tied together in a fun way where, oh, there's their boat and they washed up on shore and a rhino was there and they ran up, and I love that feeling.
I also like all the debris that's floating in the water.
That's good too.
You know, has the art supplies on it, the scientist stuff. I mean, it kind of gives it a little Gilligan's Island type vibe that everybody was somebody specific on the boat.
Mm-hmm. And they call out Skipper Felix, who's the skipper at the bottom, because it was supposed to be that's his very first time going out, and he gets his boat sunk.
I wish they would have did it the other way, where it's like, the policeman who's like, that takes a bullet on his, like, I've been doing this job 25 years.
Oh, the Danny Glover from Lethal Weapon?
Doesn't make it home on his last day.
Yes.
Like, the skipper was one cruise away from retiring.
This is his last day.
He's in the bottom of the river.
And I love the additions for, as you know, I'm my Society of Explorers and Adventurers junkie nature. I love those little subtle adds to it, because for so long, Disneyland has been the one park that hasn't really played ball.
Which is kind of wild.
Yeah, which is wild. You would assume that we would have been mixed in there somewhere. Because
it's the park that's deepest in history and fun facts.
True.
And kind of where that idea of, like, let's always embed the past and the new things started. So it's very weird that they haven't participated in that.
Yeah. And I love that it's just subtle enough to where it's fun for a guest that has no idea of the existence of that, hidden group of individuals, but it is like the gift that keeps on giving. Kind of like when it's someone like you who knows the history of the park so well that when you do find a little nod, it's just you making yourself love Disneyland even more because
100%.
You're well aware of it, as opposed to Disneyland on a surface level is so much fun as it is.
Yeah.
Like that.
It shows the TLC that's been put into things, and that, they've thought about your 100th visit.
Yeah.
So that you can still go there and be like, wow, today's adventure was different than the 99 before it. I'll do another 100.
Yep.
Just based on that.
And you and I will be the ones that will take someone who loves Disneyland as is and make them appreciate it even deeper than they thought they did, because now you're pointing out how much love and care has been put into the tiniest crack or a light bulb. A very famous white and red light bulb that now when you see the kind of effort that's been put in, now you start to look at everything that way. So I love kind of cracking that egg open for people and saying like, oh, wow, in the queue you saw, Dr. Khan and Rosa the painter, and now look in the inside the actual attraction, you can see her painting supplies and Dr. Khan's butterflies, like pointing out those little things. So I love that you mentioned earlier about the queue is always so wonky, where you don't know, like, because certain things you just end up passing altogether in there, or if they don't have the top part running, you're missing out on some of the stuff on the top level.
Well, it's like Indy's queue is a treasure trove.
Yes.
And you can go through it normally at a pace where you can enjoy it, because it's such a long haul, and the attraction is now kind of settled in that, you normally don't have somebody barking at your heels and you can kind of stop and check something out, then you got to move on. But that Jungle Cruise queue, either you're going through it so fast to get to the boat, or
efficient.
You're just moving at a pace where it's hard to get to really enjoy anything. There's a couple of new maps that are, placed to the wall. And the only time I really got to see the props was at night when everybody was trying to get in fireworks spots.
Yeah.
And then it was just kind of too hard to enjoy anything.
Because did you pace yourself through it because there was like not a big queue? Is that kind of like that?
I tried to, but it was just so dark, and
oh yeah.
I also wanted to get my nighttime rip in, and so that I could go get into a fireworks position as well. So I was trying to manage a lot in there. I was disappointed with it at night that it still is really dependent on the boat's light.
The boat light, yeah.
And on your skipper. And, I wrote it 3 times to document it. And my middle time, I don't know what a hurry our skipper was in, but just like gunned it through so many big scenes.
I have a friend who went that also commented on that as well, where there was like, she said it was like Fast and Furious.
Because I filmed it 3 times, 3 minutes shorter than the other 2.
Oh, wow.
I mean, really, like, just, hey, I hope you get the point of the rhino, the door, they're wearing their suits.
It's funny because they bring that up in the behind the attraction where Walt wrote it.
Yeah.
And the skipper, like, gunned, and he's like, what are we doing here? Like, like they need to slow down.
They also said something interesting in that feature or that little documentary thing on Disney Plus where they said that the cap gun is used to notify the skippers on timing. And then they never told it, like, it's used for timing. Timing what? Like, when I hear the cap, does that mean that I need to be on my way to the waterfall? Like, they gave that little, like, drop and my ears perked up because that's one I never heard before, but then they never gave us the payoff on that fun fact.
Yeah, that cap is used because you can hear it. You can hear it all throughout the jungle. You can hear it at the front, and that lets skippers know or the teams know where the actual boats are in the attraction. Because otherwise, like, if there are cameras out there, I mean, there's not that many of them.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's cameras sitting outside because it's not an indoor attraction. But they also use it for different purposes, like if because I believe, I'd have to double check with my friend, but if they fire it more than the twice, that also signals like there may be an issue with that boat as well. So it's like you always say that, "Kah, kah," and if they did it any more than that, that alerts.
When did they shoot up the flare?
It's all fireworks during the day. It was a boat stop.
Ricky's got his boat stuck on the backside of it again. Ricky just hit the backside of water. I like the new design changes a lot.
Yeah.
For many reasons. I love that it finally gives it like a complete story. I like that it's fun and whimsical. I like that it's non-offensive, that should unless we really get into a Planet of the Apes situation, that should age very, very nicely over time. Like, I just like it a lot. And I think most Disney fans who have their hearts in the right places agree that it's a definite move in the right direction.
It's changed so much. This was like, it's changed so much. I had a question for you actually about the change. Do you prefer the old boats with the brightly colored? Because my wife and I were talking about, or do you prefer the Indy themed boats now? Because when Indy came, they changed Jungle Cruise to match it.
Right.
But do you prefer the brightly colored ones, top ones, or do you like it now? It is now.
I love seeing the red and white canopies on the old footage, but I think that I like the grittier, like more realistic boat for this time period. Just like when you see old footage of medieval or Renaissance fair Fantasyland, like it looks cool because it's like, because of the way that all the film and the photography has like sort of tainted over the years.
Yes,
it's very much that time period. But I love Fantasyland 1983, and I would never change it. Same with Tomorrowland when it had all of those mid-century modern flourishes in there and had a way different color palette than navy blue and gold. But no, I like the boat now. I think that for my money, an attraction that admittedly that I don't love. Yeah. I celebrate it for its history, and I celebrate it for what it means to the Disneyland story. Yeah. I think this is the best version of it. I think that he did a really good job of not going too overboard. Yeah. I still would love for it to get back to the non-cringe roots.
So are there, because I know you do not like the jokes, are there any that you do like?
I mean, I have to say this.
Of the menu that they are allowed to pull from, are there any that like, that's pretty good?
There are a couple of the ones where you got to think about. Yeah. I like those better than just like the pun on the visual in front of you, because it actually is kind of humorous. I will say this, though. It does seem like the jokes have been brought down a notch because they are kind of telling a little bit of a story in there, and that I appreciate, but I still pray. I pray for a Jingle Cruise where the desert is just decked out with holiday lights, and I just get to float through there to like that old broken speaker AM transmitter, like just that sound would be awesome. And I do love that the original roots of the attraction was my vision for it. And I didn't know that when I said, man, I just wish it was more like fact-based and kind of like going into one of the old documentaries, which, by the way, Walt Disney holds a record for having Oscars.
Yeah.
And most of those Oscars came from
True Life Adventures. So that attraction, it symbolizes
one of the most successful branches of storytelling through the Walt Disney Corporation. But I wish it was that way. It is what it is, and that kind of tarnishes it a little bit for me. But at least now I only have to cringe at jokes and not jokes and racism. I'll only give you one cringe per attraction.
It's like I don't have to pick between the two. Like, it's rough.
Like, now we're up on my eyes.
The new characters are fun. I love that there are now people that don't have to, because I've been on those boats before, and people have been like, oh, and it's not everyone, of course, but like you've said before, even if it's one person, that's like, oh, that's rough.
Yeah, it's just unfair. It's unfair to somebody's moment at Disneyland to feel like that they've been depicted away. And, I get this same BS argument over and over again. But, that's what tribesmen... I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Those aren't historically correct tribesmen. Trader Sam wasn't a historically correct character. No. Like, all of this gets it to where it needs to be, so everybody can go to Disneyland and have a good time.
Yeah.
And as they cycle through, that's just called progress, and I'm all about progress. Yeah. And how could you not be?
It just keeps changing, and that's fine,
And you want to change.
You want it to change.
As a person, as a society, as your favorite theme park, you want to say, we are capable of doing better. And newsflash, if Walt was still alive, he'd already be dead. So don't give me that argument.
And he would have wanted to change. You make adjustments. Like, you hear about him realizing that people had stopped caring about the nature or informative based version of it, so he changed it.
Like an idiot.
Like a big idiot. He's like, go on, Walt.
Somebody's like, that was it, Brickey. I'll give you a pass on everything else, but calling the man
How dare you?
But, speaking of change and Walt's mindset of wanting to be progressive, they had already ripped open the earth. They had concrete poured on Pirates.
Yep.
And once he saw what they were capable of doing out in New York in 64, he called back and said, stop that project.
Change it.
We can do better. And if the man wasn't progressive, Pirates would be a walkthrough.
Yep.
And it would not have made it as far as it has.
We might have lost it by now at this point.
And nobody would have... That would have not matured the way that the ride did as the boat ride with all the animatronics. So I think that this is a vast improvement, and it's just weird. It's like such a big footprint, this attraction.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't have sort of the emotional depth as some of the other things in the park does.
Yeah, like you find a few people that are really like big fans of Jungle Cruise, but when it comes up as far as like favorite classic attractions, it's never really mentioned anybody's like top 5. You think of your top 5 like, and I'm talking, when I mean classic, I mean like anything that's like, God, what would you say is classic as far as years or iconic? Like, when does something become an iconic piece or what year? Because I would say Space Mountain would be included. That's 1977. Would you put Star Tours? That's 87.
I mean, Star Tours is like super iconic to people that are in their 30s and 40s that were raised out here when it was the biggest thing to do.
Yes.
Because for them, it was like, dude, mom and dad like bought us tickets to go to Disneyland just to see this thing. Some people waited 24 hours to ride that. So for me, it's always been a hard thing to sort of digest because I don't think that it's aged as well because, once again, Star Tours is technology-based, which is the curse of Tomorrowland. Jungle Cruise is nostalgia-based, which is the benefit of the other lands. I mean, to me, the Mark Twain is one of the most emotional rides in the park. Only made better by Galaxy's Edge expansion.
Yeah.
I don't think everybody shares that with me, that they see it as like a waste of time, or I'll ride it with people like, I haven't been on this thing in 5 years.
Yeah,
and then
when they see me get rid of that river.
Then they see me trying to throw them off the top deck. How dare you? How dare you?
The cast member is Brickey. We told you got to stop putting people in the river.
You get 1 per season, and you're already at 3.
It's like, oh, watch the Brickies to bring into some of the Mark Twain. Let's see what happens.
I think though the classics that is just sort of like unanimous across the board.
Yeah,
it goes into like Matterhorn. You know, Matterhorn, beloved by all. Space Mountain is in that same like rarefied group. Like I feel like the Tiki Room is one of those things that most people can celebrate, even though they maybe haven't been in there for a year or so, but they just understand its importance. But I feel like Jungle Cruise sometimes can come up a little bit short on that list.
Yeah, when you think of I truly believe that. Ask anybody their top 5 classic attractions, and Jungle Cruise will largely not be in there.
Yeah.
And I think people love its existence. They love that it's there. Like you said, it's a perfect thing where it's that thing where people, when we change something, everyone comes out and gets mad because while they are definitely not, and I tell them we are making these adjustments based off of attendance and things like that. Like, so we factually have seen that people have stopped caring.
Right.
But then you tell them it's leaving, and now, they all come out.
It's a piece of my childhood.
You can't take that away. Because I'll tell people we miss Muppet Vision 3D. I'm like, okay, be real with me. How many times did you go in that theater?
Yeah.
When Muppet Vision was there, like, well, I didn't do it every time. And you're like, well, that's why it's not here anymore.
Hey friends, thank you so much for listening to part 1 of today's episode, Disneyland for Designers, episode 72 with my good friend Philander Butler. To hear the bonus content, you have to be a member of Club1313.com. Giving them an extra 30 minutes is one of the ways that I try to reward them for all of the support for making the podcast available for everyone who listens and all of the YouTube videos. Coming up this Friday, I will be doing an exclusive 1313 members only live stream from the Disneyland Resort. And coming up in October, we have a special date where we will be meeting up and congregating during Oogie Boogie's Bash. Always love when the gang gets together and we get to celebrate Disneyland as the community that we have become, and we'd love to have you become a member today at Club1313.com, where 30 more minutes of this conversation is waiting for you. Coming up next, we talk all about the new Behind the Attraction show over on Disney Plus, our takes and our excitement about Oogie Boogie Bash and the Halloween season and holiday season returning to the Disneyland Resort after an absent year in 2020, and more inside jokes and good laughs than you could shake a Disneyland bubble wand at. Part 2, we like to just kind of hang out and cut loose, and there's so much fun in here for people that truly get Disneyland down to the most microscopic detail. What do you say we start the bonus content right now for members of Club1313.com? It's time to go inside the clubhouse right now. If this is where we part ways, thank you so much for listening. You know when I set the tram, right?
Yep.
Trampion, 116 laps. My friend Carrie Rutkin.
Oh, Carrie.
A couple of weeks later, we went and saw Mickey's PhilharMagic because it had just opened up. And after it was over, he looked over at me and he goes, "You know the record of the guy who's seen this the most times?" I go, "No, what?" He goes, "1." I just think sometimes those things like Muppet Vision, like, there's not a real call to come back to those things. So things like Star Tours or the Jungle Cruise, where it is more of a ride with a story involved in it.
Yeah.
And I think that helps out a lot. All right, let's do this. Let's hop over into Club 1313 and talk about some current events that are going on.
Clubs.
No, thank you. Let's hop over and talk about some current events. I think one of the ones that's buzzing right now on everybody's mind is this new Behind the Attraction.
Yeah, Behind the Attraction, Disney Plus.
I'm 4 episodes in, and I definitely, I'm watching it because I love Disneyland and I'll consume anything about it. But I'm seeing that I definitely feel like it missed the mark a little bit on what I was expecting.
Yes.
And I think it really, to me, shows how perfect Imagineering story was.
Yeah. There is a very strong emotional connection that comes with the things they're talking about, which is why I think a lot of us hoped, and I'm not knocking anyway, I am someone like you who will consume anything they make, and I'm happy just straight up that they are releasing documented footage. Sure. Some of that stuff is archival that they're finding that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
Like, I loved the beginning of the Haunted Mansion one where they had Paul Frees talking before he starts the spiel for Mansion. Like, he's like, "Oh, okay, I'll adjust my voice and sing it, and I'll say it this way."
Have you heard the full cuts of that vocal session?
I've heard, I'm going to say most of them, if not all of them, because I've had friends play it for me before. So I'm not sure if I've got all of them. But hearing that, it's like, oh, that's so fascinating. Like, okay, Paul, we're gonna have you try it, sing it this way. He's like, oh, okay, I'll change my voice a little bit at the beginning. Welcome, fool. Like hearing
guy will do the most amazing read, and then you hear the engineer be like, I feel like the pacing was a little bit off. Can you do it maybe a little
more time?
Maybe a little bit more there at the end. He's like, okay, no problem. And then he just like jumps into welcome, and you're just like, wow. Like he just turns it on and becomes that character.
Yeah, so I will always love anything they release like that. But I do agree with you that the way that this was packaged is very unique, and I think you brought it up earlier. It's themed almost to like the way YouTube is set up, where this is like a big meal for like the average Disney fan. So like I think a lot of people could just consume this because they like the park. But when you get to